Hello, everyone, and welcome to Autism Stories, where we connect you with amazing people that help autistic adults and teens become more successful. I'm your host, Doug Bletcher, the founder of Autism Personal Coach. We have talked many times on Autism Stories about the power of special interests for autistic people, how these special interests can develop community, open you up to new experiences, help to deal with sensory sensitivities, and can give you so many other positive benefits. On this episode of Autism Stories, we will talk with Jeff Joyner about his son Logan's special interest of roller coasters and how this passion has enhanced Logan's life in so many different ways. We hope you enjoyed today's conversation. Jeff, thanks so much for joining us today.
Hi, good to be here.
I wanted to start off with learning, where does your story in the autism community begin?
Well, we started, I think where almost every other parent in the autism community started, with a kid that was struggling. We have two daughters, Amanda and Natalie, and our third child is named Logan. And both of our girls were talking around their first birthday. Logan was not. Still not talking around his second birthday. Started doing a lot of really, really repetitive things. Wanted to be the first one to come in the house, close the door, open the door, let everybody come in, close the door again. And if you didn't let him do that, he'd scream for hours. And if the microwave buzzed, he'd come running from wherever he was in the house and wanted to lift him up and let him open the door of the microwave. And if you didn't let him do that, he'd scream for hours. And we thought for a while that we just kind of had a fussy child. Maybe this is the terrible twos. And then when he turned 3, he still hadn't started talking yet, but started more and more screaming and crying, covering his ears when he was upset, getting very, very frustrated. And then, you could tell he'd get frustrated, and then he was frustrated because he was frustrated, and I think he forgot what he was upset about even, but he was just upset all the time. Around 3.5 is when he started punching himself in the face and slapping himself in the face, and you'd have to grab his arm and hold him back, and he'd punch himself with the other hand, and you'd have to wrap him up and hold him, until he fell asleep, sometimes for hours. And that's when we kind of admitted as parents, this is more than just a fussy kid. We need some help. And so we had a neighbor suggest, the school district has an evaluation program for special needs kids. And we were honestly a little in denial about that for a day or two. Like, special needs, I don't know. And but we needed help. And so we went in and had Logan evaluated, and then we had the meeting. And if you've ever been to the meeting, you know what I'm talking about. It was the speech pathologist and the audiologist and the occupational therapist and the early childhood development specialist and the child psychologist and the special ed teacher. And they gave us what we kind of thought was coming, which was an educational assessment of autism. And little freaked out about that, thought maybe they were going to say that, but didn't really know what to do. We were blown away by the plan that they put together for him, the IEP, and that there was all these experts that were pretty confident that they could teach him how to talk, and they could teach him how to use scissors and hold a pen and learn how to write, and all things he couldn't do at the time. And so that began our journey.
Now, Logan has developed a passion for roller coasters, but there was a time when nobody would have ever imagined Logan would ride a roller coaster. Why was that the case?
Well, yeah, he was, had an interesting mix of things that he didn't like every kid on the spectrum. The things that really seemed to bother him the most, some I think typical, maybe some not as common, but, did not like loud noises, did not like unfamiliar surroundings, didn't like crowds, didn't like strangers, didn't like heights or fast-moving things. And so we were quite shocked when we noticed that he started liking to go on YouTube and watch videos of roller coasters. And he would watch what they call the POV videos, the point of view. which is like a camera on the front of the coaster, and he would watch for hours and hours and hours. And by this time, I mean, he was doing that when he was, he probably started around when he was 5. And he did that when he was 5 and when he was 6 and when he was 7. And we'd say, Logan, do you want to ride a roller coaster? And he'd say, are you crazy? They're high, they're fast, they're loud, they're full of strangers. Why would you say that? And we're like, well, you're the one watching these videos. And it was fascinating. And then he did that for several years. And then we lived right by Kings Island, which I think, you grew up in Cincinnati. You used to live here at least. You know where Kings Island is. And we would go over to Kings Island, and he would watch the coasters. And he spent a year just watching the coasters. And he was afraid to ride. And in fact, he would memorize the footage that he saw on YouTube. And then he would go to the park and sit in one of the test seats outside of the ride, and he would close his eyes and play the video of himself riding in his mind, and you could see him turning his head, and it was really, really interesting. But he also during that time was memorizing all the stats. By the time he was 8 years old, he could tell you every roller coaster in the world, how tall it is, how fast it goes, the angle of its steepest hill, the manufacturer, what year that it opened, how many feet of track. And it was fascinating. He's probably the world's leading expert at the time on coasters who'd never ridden a roller coaster. But one day, in June, when he was 8 years old, he said, Dad, I'm ready to be brave. And I said, what does that mean? He said, I want to ride a roller coaster. And I said, okay, do you know which one? And he said, yep, Snoopy's Flying Ace Aerial Chase at Kings Island. It opened in 1991. It's 2,374 feet of track. He knew all the stats. And so we went over to Kings Island, and he rode it with his sister, and he loved it. He just loved it. And then he wanted to ride Racer, and then he wanted to ride Adventure Express. And that summer, he rode every roller coaster at Kings Island. It was amazing.
Every human being has fears, and in many cases, it stops us from taking action in our lives. So I'm wondering, has Logan overcoming his fear of roller coasters benefited him in other areas of his life?
Yeah, it really has. We noticed that summer that he started riding, he very quickly started kind of shedding some of his other limitations, and I don't know if the proper term is symptoms or not. That's probably not the right term. But things that used to always bother him kind of started fading away. And, the first thing we noticed is that he wasn't afraid of loud noises anymore. He was the kid in kindergarten, in first and second grade, who had to have the noise-reducing headphones on all the time. We had to, the teachers had to pull him out of the school before they did a fire drill because it just was not a good thing. But when he overcame his fears of heights and fast-moving things, and it was his interest and passion in coasters that really kind of drove him, but we really noticed a big difference in some other areas. And when it kind of came to a head as we went back to school that fall, and we had our first meeting with his IEP teachers, and they looked at us. This is all the special ed teachers at the first meeting, parent-teacher meeting we had, and they looked at us and said, "Okay, what happened to Logan?" And we said, "What happened to Logan?" And they said, "He's a completely different kid. He's not afraid of loud noises. He's looking his teachers in the eye. He's communicating better. He's sitting in class quietly. Like, what happened?" And we told him that he rode all the coasters at Kings Island that summer, and they didn't even believe us. They said, look right here in his file. It says that this kid is afraid of loud noises, strangers, crowds, fast-moving things, heights. There's no way he rode coasters. And I said, well, I don't really know why, but he chose the one activity that's all of those things. And the theory that I have, and some of them are actually kind of considering doing some research on this, is that what really, I think, Logan, I don't know if this is true for other kids, seems to be for some, but what really frightened him, if you boiled it down, was he was afraid of unpredictable situations. And so that was the loud noise. It wasn't the volume, it was the surprise. Same with the crowd, same with the fast-moving things. And so when he would watch those videos online, it reduced his the unpredictability. That, he would memorize what the coaster looked like to ride before he rode it. So he knew, coasters are the ultimate predictable experience. They always go the same speed every time. They always turn left before they turn right. And so that's really was a real key to his breakthroughs was reducing, giving him a format that he could reduce that anxiety that he had from the unpredictable. And then the other thing we saw with him was a real sense of pride and accomplishment each time that he would, because he was afraid to ride each new coaster. He would get worked up, and he would, each coaster he rode was another overcoming adventure for him. It was another breakthrough. And he would get off and say, I'm so proud of myself for riding that. And, it's been my experience that a lot of kids on the spectrum don't have that many opportunities to push themselves past their fears and then experience the pride that comes along with that. And so, he started doing better in school. The whole thing was quite remarkable.
Now, present day, Logan has been on well over 200 roller coasters. So I imagine there's been a good amount of traveling for him to go on all these rides, because there are not 200 roller coasters at Kings Island. So traveling, I think, is a great way to expand your worldview by opening you up to new experiences. But there's a lot of unknown expectations. So whether it's new people, changes in routine, sensory sensitivities. So what strategies have you used to make these challenges less stressful for Logan?
Great question. Yeah, he, at that first IEP meeting, I give his teachers a lot of credit, because they said, what you're doing for Logan at home is helping him more than what we're doing in school. And so they wrote it into his development plan that we could take him out of school anytime to go to a theme park for therapy. And so, Kings Island is part of a chain of theme parks called Cedar Fair. And so we bought platinum passes for Cedar Fair for Christmas that year, and decided to visit some other parks. And he was so excited. The first one we went to was Knott's Berry Farm out in California. So that was his first ride on an airplane, I think. That was, first time, staying in new, unfamiliar surroundings. Then we went to Carowinds down in Charlotte and King's Dominion down in Virginia. What I think helped Logan is, he was driven by his passion, right? Like his just desire to ride these coasters. He knew he had to travel to ride these coasters. And so he was willing to kind of take in stride the parts of it he didn't like, and he kind of learned to focus. He kind of learned to just ignore the parts he didn't like and focus on the parts that he did like. And it really took off to the point he's now ridden over 500 coasters. I think he's like 550. According to American Coaster Enthusiasts, the world's largest fan club for roller coasters, he's the youngest person to ever ride 500 different coasters. And we've been all around the world. In 2018, we took a trip to Europe, and he and I went to 21 theme parks in 22 days in Spain and Italy and Germany and the Netherlands and Sweden and the UK. And boy, did that push him out of his comfort zone, because now, you're not staying at the Courtyard Marriott that he's used to. We were staying in bed and breakfasts and weird hostels and planes, trains, automobiles, rental cars. Lots of food. He's always been a picky eater. He's always kind of been, French fries and pizza and chicken nuggets. And we get to Europe, and they don't always have that. And so we had some adventures. We were at a restaurant where the closest thing we could find to what he was used to was Wiener Schnitzel. And I said, well, it's basically a big flat chicken nugget. And but again, he started mirroring the experiences he had on coasters, and he would try something new and say, I didn't like it, but I'm proud of myself for trying it. And that's really kind of, he's talked before about, he just got interviewed for a documentary about roller coaster enthusiasts last weekend. And he said something in the interview. He said, because he's almost 15 years old now, but he said, I got addicted to the process of facing and overcoming my fears and feeling proud of myself. And it's a pretty awesome thing.
That definitely is. And I've said it so many times that we all need community. And I think one of the really cool things that has come out of Logan's passion for roller coasters is that he has started a YouTube channel, Coaster Kids, that has allowed him to connect with kids from 181 different countries. How has developing this community been important in Logan's life?
Well, it all kind of happened by accident, really, but it's been remarkable. He when we went to Knott's Berry Farm, so that was only the second park he'd ever been to, and he said, "Dad, I want to start a YouTube channel." And I honestly didn't even know what that was. I mean, I knew you could watch videos on YouTube. I didn't know you could have your own like TV channel on YouTube. And he had it all planned. He wanted to call it Coaster Kids with a K and a K, and he wanted to ride coasters. And he said, "Dad, I want to rate them on the LSS." And I said, "What is the LSS?" He said, "It's the Logan Scream Scale. It's 0 to 5 screams." And so he made a little video at Knott's Berry Farm about one of their coasters, and he rated it 5 screams on the scream scale. And we thought, maybe Grandma and Grandpa watch these videos, but we started getting viewers and comments and emails from kids all over the world that were saying, not only did they like his videos, but they were inspired by his courage. And, the one that, kind of really blew me away when I first knew we were kind of onto something with this whole thing was we got a video sent in from a 10-year-old boy in Israel. And he said, "Shalom, Logan." He said, "We don't have roller coasters really in Israel. We have rockets and bombs that fall from the sky. And I'm afraid to leave my house. I haven't been to school in 2 years. But I've been watching Logan's videos on the internet, and if he can be brave enough to ride those coasters, I can be brave enough to go to school. And I went to school every day last week, Logan. Thank you." And, I'm showing this kid on a globe where Israel is. You know how bizarre that is? But so as it kind of grew and grew and grew, his channel, then, he was having fun doing it. And then he said one day, "Dad, we should do a meetup." I said, "What's a meetup?" "It's a YouTube thing. You tell your fans where you're going to be and they meet you." And I said, "Oh, you have fans now." And so he announced, "Hey, I'm going to be doing a meetup at Kings Island on Wednesday." And we got over there, and there was about 25 kids who all showed up that wanted to meet him. Interesting demographic. A lot of single children, a lot of only children of single moms that go to the park and ride with mom, but that gets old pretty quick. And so they wanted to meet Logan. A lot of kids who were really into roller coasters, but none of their friends weren't. None of their friends were into it, and so they felt like weirdos. They felt like outcasts, and they found with Logan a kindred spirit. And they've told us, hundreds and hundreds of these kids and their parents have told us, "My kid really felt like a weirdo until he found Logan online, and he said, man, that kid is just like me." And then we've also met a lot of families with kids that are on the spectrum too, and a lot more than I would have ever thought. Probably 200 families that we've connected with that have kids on the autism spectrum, that they're into coasters too. And we talk about it. We think some of it has to do with the sensory G-forces of coasters. Some of it is kind of the stat-driven part of it. But these connections have been really, really a blessing to our family and to a lot of other families too. And it helped continue to push Logan out of his comfort zone, right? Because just when he was experiencing victory with coasters, along comes a bunch of strangers wanting to meet him. And these kids would come running up at a theme park and throw their arms around him. And he was very uncomfortable with the physical contact, very uncomfortable with talking to strangers. But his passion for what he was doing kind of drove him through it. And I remember him telling me when he was, probably 11 years old. He said, "Dad, I'm just not comfortable talking to all these strangers, but I know it's my responsibility as a YouTuber, and those are customers of mine." And a lot of them buy his T-shirts off his website, so they really are customers. But talking to, the first year riding coasters pushed him out of his comfort zone. The next year making the videos did, because it was really hard for him to articulate his ideas. We would delete 10 takes for probably every one that we kept. And but he became really a much better communicator. When he was in 6th grade, they tested him, and he was in the 99th percentile of every 6th grader in America for talking in front of the class. and reading in front of the class. And it was because of these YouTube videos he makes. And I just marveled the whole time, because here's a kid who couldn't even talk a few years ago. It's amazing. And and then meeting all the strangers really kind of helped him. And now he's developed a team of kids that work for him around the country that are reporters for his channel. He's got other teenage kids are reporters for his channel that make content for him. That they live in Australia and England and Scotland and Italy and Germany and Canada to Mexico, all around the country. And so now he's learning some things right now about leadership, that he's got this team that he's put together that he's kind of guiding. And so every step of the way, he's been growing and changing. But all the growth has been rooted in, we never really pushed him, but we put him in a position to push himself. And he's very proud of his victories, and we're proud of him too.
Has Logan talked about, like, in the future where he would want to take his passion for roller coasters?
He kind of on and off. I think he's like a lot of kids. He doesn't really know. A lot of the kids we meet want to be roller coaster design engineers. And he did an interview with the guy who built Mystic Timbers roller coaster at Kings Island. And the guy said, well, you got to love math. And Logan said, I'm out. And so he's done a little bit of speaking. I do professional speaking and training for a living, and I often bring him along with me so we can go visit a theme park. And I asked him if he'd mind sharing with one of my audiences about what he's learned, and he just rocks the crowd. I mean, standing ovation, where he's talked about, what he's learned about courage and what he's learned about working with people. And you can find those videos on his channel if anybody's interested, on Coaster Kids with a K and a K. But so I really don't know. One of the things he's fallen in love with is helping people. So I think whatever he does in the future may kind of involve that. But we really don't know. I think he might be excited about being part of the theme park industry. Although currently, just in the last few months, he's gotten more and more interested in other adventure things besides just roller coasters. He did his first bungee jump last November. He jumped with a rubber band tied to his ankles, jumped off a 240-foot tall bridge, and he did it twice. And he's just knocking down one fear after the other. And so he started a new channel at the end of last year called Thrills United, that he's going to focus on bungee jumping and base jumping and skydiving and whitewater rafting. And so he's dragging me into all these activities too. But we'll see where it all goes. But we really don't know at this point.
You were talking a little bit earlier about courage, and one of the awesome things that I think about Coaster Kids is the creation of the Be Brave Challenge. Can you tell our listeners what this challenge is all about?
Yeah, about probably 3 years ago now, maybe 4 years ago, when Coaster Kids was still really getting started. Do you remember the ice bucket challenge, when people were dumping buckets of ice on their head?
Sure.
Logan saw that, and he said, I want to do some kind of viral challenge like that. And he said, I want to start the Be Brave Challenge and encourage everyone in the world to overcome one of their fears. And one of my favorite videos he ever made is he was explaining this concept he had. And, and about how, he even understood when he was, 10, 11 years old, that, most people are just wrapped up in fears. And it's not just kids on the spectrum. It's everybody. Fear of other people's opinion. And it's not just fear of heights and fear of snakes and fear of sharks. It's fear of what other people think. It's fear of failure. And he kind of dialed into how being brave was a key to his own growth, and kind of wants to challenge other people to do the same thing. So he made this video describing it, and he said, let me give you, one of the things he said that is really profound, and I don't think he made it up. He heard someone saying it, but he said, he really believes, and I agree with him, that courage isn't the absence of fear. Courage is when you are afraid, you do the right thing anyway. And he made this video and said, let me give you some examples of courage. And I thought, oh boy, what's he going to say? And he said, you can make a video riding a coaster you've always been afraid of, or you can hold a snake if you're afraid of snakes, or you can ride a skateboard. He said, or you could just apologize to somebody. And I said, wow, little man, you don't know how many grown-ups I know would rather hold a snake than apologize to somebody. But so he kind of put out this call for submissions for this. And so kids send in these video clips from all over the world. I think he's done 19 of the videos now featuring collections of these clips, and he's working on the 20th now. But, a kid in Germany who's, Guten Logan, the drop tower is so terrifying, but I'm going to do it. And the part that he loves about it, and I love too, kind of watching these and filming these Be Brave challenges, is that always, 100% of the time, the kids are proud of themselves after they do it. And it's not just kids. We've got some from adults too. But these kids that are so wrapped up in their fears push themselves through. And I think it's cool. He's developed this real kind of positive peer pressure that, you're not making anybody do it, right? Forcing anyone who's worked with special need kids know that forcing them to do something they don't want to do is not good. That's not healthy. That's not productive. But Logan and I have learned how we look these kids in the eye, and you can tell, do they really want to do it? And they're just afraid, or are they not ready? And the ones who aren't ready, we let them off the hook. But we've had, hundreds and hundreds of these kids that just, it's so cool to see them light up and feel so good about themselves for having some courage. And it's, unfortunately, it's a life lesson that's not really taught in school, I don't think. And I ruffle some feathers sometimes when I talk about this. Feel free to cut this part. But a lot of my experience with people in the autism community, and a lot of the focus of some of the big national organizations like Autism Speaks and the Autism Society and these groups, is on research and accommodation, which is good, making life more comfortable for these kids, making the world a better place for them to live in, or at least trying to. But there's very little focus on the power of helping, empowering, encouraging these kids to face their fears and grow. I've contacted some of those organizations about having Logan be a speaker at one of their national conferences because his story is remarkable. It's remarkable how far he's come. And I was told in pretty uncertain terms that they're not interested in stories like Logan's because there's no money in it when kids get better. And which a little part of my soul died when I heard that. But I do think there's something to be said that, and I've had a lot of other parents too that have come, maybe heard me speak at a conference and came up with tears in their eyes and like, boy, your kid gives my kid hope. I got a kid on the spectrum too who's maybe 3 or 4 or 5. And I always ask him, what's your kid obsessed with? And it's always something different. He's obsessed with trains or light bulbs or, plumbing, whatever. And my advice to them, I'm not an expert, but here's my advice. Dig into those obsessions, right? Why don't you go on vacation to the light bulb museum or whatever? Because that's where all Logan's breakthroughs came through his obsession, not trying to steer him toward being a quote-unquote normal kid, but saying, hey, it's okay that you're obsessed with roller coasters. Let's make this part of our life. And it changed everything.
For those that might want to get in touch with Logan and Coaster Kids, how would they go about doing so?
Well, they can find him on YouTube, either Coaster Kids with a K and a K or Thrills United. He also is pretty active on social media. We interact with a lot of these kids on Instagram at Coaster Kids and Thrills United. A lot of their parents we connect with on Facebook, or somebody can send an email to coasterkidsohio@gmail.com, or his new website, logan@thrillsunited.com. And if anyone's interested, I think, Doug, you saw the video or part of it at least. My wife and I made a very amateur documentary a couple of years ago about his story, and it's got footage of him in there when he was 3 years old, punching himself, and it's heart-wrenching. But it really is a story of victory and overcoming, and it'd mean a lot to us if anyone hears this story and it gives somebody some hope. That I think that's one of the hardest things having kids on the spectrum. A lot of these families we meet a lot of families with kids that are 4, 5, 6, 7 years old, and they look at Logan, and he's a freshman in high school. He's in a regular class. He's got a beautiful girlfriend. He is not just surviving the world, but he's thriving. We still have some challenges. He still struggles with his homework sometimes. He's still on an IEP. but he's having victory in his life. And the fact that gives some other people kind of hope of what their future can look like is a pretty amazing thing.
Well, Jeff, I really appreciated your time, and thanks so much for joining us today.
You're welcome. Enjoyed it.
Thank you for listening to today's episode, and thank you so much to Jeff for the conversation. It is always great hearing about how someone's special interests have changed their life for the better, because that is something through the coaching of Autism Personal Coach we are consistently emphasizing. To get an autism coach to support you or a loved one in getting more involved in your special interest, email doug.bletcher@autismpersonalcoach.com or call or text 216-336-5889 and request a coach today. On the next episode of Autism Stories, Matthew Kaiser will join us to talk about comedy and the positive impacts that this can have on the lives of autistic people. Talk to you then.
Social skill issues, verbal and nonverbal, repetitive behavior, all signs of ASD, easily angered, easily confused, to comprehend what is being said, standing in line, swaying back and forth. People stare at us like we are fools, getting real nervous, talking a lot, getting real fidgety. We need some distractions. Who am I? I'm a human too. I'm just like you with ASD. Who am I? I'm a human too. I'm just like